to excel in all this information vastness, in this wasteland of information and social media junk. And we have the two perfect gentlemen here on the stage, Juris and Christoph. You know Christoph, he was on the stage right here talking with the president.
Yeah, we will speak how about our last couple of hours.
Excellent. So the stage is yours, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It feels like we are in an unofficial part of the Digital Freedom Festival. Can we have some beer, please? Anyways, really, we apologize for the delay, but we have a good excuse. We had the most important person in the country that, took your time. So, how was the talk with the president?
I enjoyed it. He talked about his favorite food. And well, we have to explain a little bit.
But it all started about the conversation started about the democracy, and somehow it ended with
potatoes. Yeah. So it was funny because he obviously lived in Germany for a long time of his life. So when we went to see him at the palace just a few hours before we actually went on stage, just to have a little conversation, we spoke in German with each other. And so when
what's our president German like?
I don't understand how he is in Latvian. So, but he was really a nice chap to talk to.
But did he has a particular accent in German? Or?
Not particular. No. He was like, I would probably say some kind of accent, but it was not identifiable very easily. And he was. He was fluent German speaking about everything that was happening, how he grew up. He moved to, his parents moved to Münster in West Germany when he was 17. So it must have also been quite tough for him at the time. And he didn't speak a word of German when they moved to Germany, he told me. So when we were on stage, obviously, we spoke in English with each other. And when I asked him about this little story that he told the BBC World Service, when they had asked him, how his life had changed since he had become the president of the country, and his answer to the BBC was, well, he doesn't have time for lunch anymore. So I asked him, what's your favorite food, Latvian food, favorite dish? And he was looking at me, and I could see him trying to talk in German with me, like even saying very quietly Kartoffel, which of course is the German word for potato. And then he came up, it took him a moment, and then he came up with potato, and then that was it.
But before the potatoes, you were speaking about information and social media, and as an event organizer, I didn't have a chance to listen to that. So would you?
Could I sum it up for you?
Yeah, sum it up for me, please. And for us.
Yes.
Bon appetit.
Well, his point, I think, is that he. Although he's he's also using social media and he's online as well.
But his comment was that he has to use it.
Yes, he's very skeptical about the way we give away our data, and that the way the social media is trying to, that we're being monitored. That's the word he was using, and giving away data and that, from his example, talking about China, creating the social ranking of every citizen of China by monitoring everyone, and specifically putting you in this sort of social position if you behave, as he called it, mainstream in China. I think that's a big point that he was trying to make, that we should be very much aware of the fact that we're leaving so much data. Giving away so much information of ourselves, and that because it has just started, this development in the last, I guess, 15 or 20 years, that we should be very much aware of it, and that we should also be, taking action, that we're not being monitored the way that we are being monitored right now, then that this should be handled by politics.
Okay, that's pretty foolproof answer for him, that we should be careful with our social media and smartphones. But okay, let's get more specific. Christoph here represents one very excellent media brand, ZEIT, and it's not his first time in Riga, and it's a pleasure that you came here. And let's speak about ZEIT and how you use social media in communicating with different segments of auditory. And you yourself, you are very social media savvy, and you use Instagram all the time. And
yeah, it's one of those depressing moments is always when you have your talking about being monitored, right? If you're checking your mobile and see how much time you spend, it's always depressing, right, on your mobile phone. Yeah. But by the way, the president is just on stage. The president told me that he's been a very active reader of ZEIT all his life. So I was very happy to hear that. Yeah, I think for a sort of a traditional media brand like ZEIT, which is like a big weekly paper originally founded.
What's the circulation?
Circulation has actually been rising.
Rising?
Yes, I know it's a bit of a crazy development. Our circulation has been rising in the last 15 years. In the 90s, our circulation was around 400,000. Now we're up to 500,000. Like we just, yeah. And
500,000 sounds better.
500,000, yeah. Well, being very polite. Yes, and also with digital subscriptions, I think we're quite successful. We have introduced a model, a digital subscription model that's called ZEIT Plus, which is very successful, being copied a lot by other media companies now, which I think is the biggest compliment.
Especially the Plus.
The Plus, yes, exactly. So yeah, so that works pretty well, but yeah, talking about social media, I mean, I guess it's like what we all do, like we're trying to find out where our future readers are and how we can communicate with our readers. And I don't have a big strategy. I'm just experimenting on the way. We just started on TikTok 2 or 3 weeks ago because I thought like, well, maybe it's the time to experiment with a new medium, and so yeah, we're doing this. I'm like on the way learning how to use it, and like if it makes sense, we were I think the first big media brand to be on Snapchat. Now, who cares about Snapchat as a medium? It's a communication tool,
okay,
right?
As a media, because a few hands will rise if you say I don't care about Snapchat.
No, like in direct communication, it's still a big success. But in terms of media, you just have to try out, I guess.
So it's very interesting that you are using TikTok. Any one of you uses TikTok? Except my kid, she's in the front row. I know you use TikTok, and when I saw it, it makes no sense.
Well, the thing is, from my experience, how old is your kid?
14.
14.
13.
13, nearly 14, nearly 14. When you're at this age, this is a very important information, right? I'm not 14 yet, but I'll be 14 very soon. Yeah, I'll remember that. Yeah, very soon. I think if for me as an editor, as a journalist, and I'm 45 now, so it's very important to jump into these unknown waters all the time, just to be able to learn and understand what's happening. I'm not actively using TikTok every day at the moment, but when I downloaded the app, and when my social media editor, she's 23. Her younger sister, who's 17, so she's sort of more or less your generation, had to teach her how to use it, right? How to edit the videos, all these things that you do on TikTok. When we started experimenting with it, I realized, okay, so TikTok is offering you to post and publish the video that you produce on TikTok on every other social media platform. So sometimes now we're posting a TikTok video on Instagram, and I don't think that Instagram likes it. I guess they will be trying to stopping it.
But China likes it definitely.
Well, but the thing is, now I'm getting responses like you're on TikTok, but most of the reactions I get for the TikTok videos, we obviously get on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. So if I wouldn't have been there and experimenting with TikTok, I wouldn't have known. And technically speaking, I mean, TikTok used to be called Musical.ly right before it was bought, and so technically speaking, it's a video platform, and it's very easy to edit your own video. And I'm really waiting for Mark Zuckerberg to do what he did with Snapchat. I believe that Instagram will introduce these features very soon, because it's, I mean, talk to your daughter. I mean, I think it's super dangerous for the older Instagram, for the older social media platforms.
And what would be your primary social media channel for the media brand?
Well, interestingly enough, for years people are saying that everyone's leaving Facebook. From the numbers that we see, people don't. There still are on Facebook. Someone is actually has a mic on and is doing something with the mic. It's really nice. It was a cool sound, like a human beatbox. Yeah, exactly. It sounded
Whoever
like George Clooney
that,
on Mr. Fantastic, Mr. Fox. Like, is that your signature move? Yeah. It's all about experimenting, but Facebook is still like the main source. And also, if you want to really reach out to a younger audience, of course, it's Instagram. Yeah.
So, and what's your KPI for the success of using new platforms? You say you jumped on TikTok. What's the KPI? How long are you experimenting with?
Well, I think that if you start as a media brand, it's all about communicating with potential readers. So if you get reactions from younger readers, and that's just perfectly fine. So, since we are on social media, I mean, I think we went on social media in 2009 or 8. We've been constantly making the experience of younger readers being in touch with ZEIT as a brand for the very first time by reading a tweet or by seeing an Instagram story from us or about us. So I think that's just a very good thing to be reaching out to next generations of readers.
And let's get more personal. What is your personal social media agenda or routine? How do you start day? You wake up and you go on Facebook, or you wake up and you go and clean the tooth?
Okay, so that's very depressing to ask. I'm one of those people who wakes up with the mobile phone. So
let's do a quick quiz. What's the first thing you do in the morning? Raise your hand if the first thing is you check your social media accounts.
No one is ever doing that. People do it, but no one wants. Oh yeah, your daughter does. Oh, yeah. That's two. So no, like.
And now those who lied, please.
Yeah. Then usually when I'm at home, but I also like play music from my smartphone on the speaker. So yeah, because I listen to music a lot, and so then I start the day. Usually I go running every morning, so then I just take the mobile phone, put in the headphones, and then start running and listening to either a news podcast or live radio or music. That's how I start the day.
Okay, and here we have an opportunity for questions from the audience. If you have, please, here's a catch box, just raise your hand, and this box will fly your direction. Don't worry, it's puffy, it won't hurt you, but please, please, if you have some question, maybe Artis, you have. Anyways, that's a typical reaction in Latvian audience.
I do have a question, actually.
Yes.
Because I think nowadays, with all the technological advances, podcasts, social media, I think that everybody can be a journalist nowadays.
Right.
So, returning to the topic of this discussion, what makes a journalist, and what makes a journalist an excellent journalist?
I don't think it has to do with the medium, whether it's you know, you work for a magazine or a newspaper. I think you have to be curious and open, which is the most important thing, and just listen and look, like how, you know, people behave, and like be interested and be open to what is happening. I always find it interesting when like people who are younger sort of suddenly say like, oh, you know, TikTok, it's not me anymore. Then it's fascinating, because 10 or 15 years ago, people would say the same thing about Facebook. Like, oh, you know, social media and Facebook, that's not me anymore. So I think to stay open, whether you're actually actively using the social media platform like this or not, but just to be interested in what's happening and trying to understand why are they actually using it. And what's so fascinating about it. I think it's very important. And experimenting with new formats. I mean, you know, so ZEITmagazin is a weekly magazine. But whenever sort of a new media platform becomes popular, like newsletters, for example, a couple of years ago, suddenly everyone was, you know, starting newsletters again, I think, after a couple of years. So we thought about the fact that should we actually produce a newsletter? And then I thought, well, actually no, because, you know, the magazine is not a typical political magazine that will give you an analysis of what is happening in Brussels on a Tuesday morning. You wouldn't expect that from ZEITmagazin. You would expect that from ZEIT Online, from our website, or from our weekly paper, but not from the magazine. So initially I said, well, let's not do it. Then we had a meeting of 6 people in a room, and we talked about the fact that what would you expect from a ZEITmagazin newsletter? Well, and someone said, well, maybe just some nice inspirations for the nicer part of the day, like after work. And then we thought, oh, okay, this could be interesting. So maybe let's send out a newsletter at around 5 p.m. and with some, you know, telling you which new Netflix show is just on, or the, you know, a new video by Selena Gomez has just been released, or a new book or an exhibition you should see. And then we kind of experimented with the form, and now we're actually doing it. So I'm writing a daily newsletter every day. Daily? Yes, daily. So from Monday to Friday, I'm writing a newsletter throughout the day. I have a co-writer, so we work together very closely, but every text, there's usually there's always 5 topics a day. You know, I write a very personal and a quite personal style, so we send it out at 5 p.m. You can subscribe to it. It's free. It's called Was für ein Tag, what a day.
And it's in German.
I'm sorry about that, yeah, it's in German. But we have like around 100,000 subscribers now. And that's a very interesting thing. So you can reach out to people in a very personal style. You know, you're in the mailbox every day. And we have, by now, we've been doing it for nearly 2 years, I guess. So we have like record companies or people from museums reaching out to us, asking me if I could write about it, not in the magazine, but in the newsletter.
We have a question.
Yeah. Hi.
Hello.
I would like to ask, how many digital subscribers do you have?
Subscribers for ZEIT?
Yeah.
Actually, quite a lot. It's 350,000. Or yeah.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah, it's the highest number in Germany.
So, have you been able to migrate your paper product subscribers into the digital subscribers, or is it just a new like audience?
I think it's a very good question. I think it's a mix. But we have, I don't know the exact number, but it's So I won't give you. I don't like to give you a wrong number here, but the digital subscription, of course, is rising, continually rising, and I think it's, from what we know, it's either new readers or it's readers who want to have a combination of both. Because especially with it's a weekly paper and a weekly magazine, which is a bit of a rare thing. So we are published on Wednesday night digitally and on Thursday in print. And there's a large group of readers who really enjoy sort of taking the magazine on the weekend and relax, or like open the big paper. And I find it so interesting because the way we use media now is so much, of course, so different to how it used to be. If you would read a magazine 20 years ago, I guess, you would just flip through the pages, you would take a look at some, nice photographs and maybe read something. But today, if you open up a print magazine, you have to do something that you rarely do. You have to leave your mobile away. So like reading a magazine today in print is more out of a vacation feeling. It's more of like reading a book. And I think that's something that we always have to bear in mind if we're editing a magazine today. If you read a magazine today, you really want to get into a story and spend some time there. That's actually how also, I'm hosting a podcast with my colleague Jochen Wegner, who's the editor of ZEIT Online. And it's called Alles gesagt, Everything Said. And we launched it last year in the spring. And it started off because we had a dinner together. And we were complaining about how boring journalism has become in so many ways. And
for example?
Well, it's all these kind of limitations you have, like limitations of time or limitations of pages or budget, exactly. So we thought about, well, how would an interview with a person, someone of interest, be like without any limitations? So we came up with the idea of inviting a celebrity to our studio in an apartment in Berlin, and we don't know when the interview is going to end. So the only person in the room who can actually say, now everything has been said, is the guest. So we start the conversation, and we don't know if it's going to last for 60 minutes or 20 minutes, and the guest actually knows, she or he can stop the conversation anytime. So we just gave it a try, and it's become one of the most popular podcasts in Germany. And the crazy thing is, the record that we just reached was with this German YouTuber called Rezo, who made a very important video this year on YouTube called The Destruction of the Conservative Party, the Zerstörung der CDU, which is a very critical and political video about the Grand Coalition in Germany. And the conversation with him took 8 hours and 40 minutes. And I can tell you, this feels like a jet lag afterwards. You really, because your mobile is off for 8 hours and 40 minutes. You don't communicate with anyone else, just the people in the room. And people really, we have so many downloads, it's crazy. And I think
you have?
We don't give away official numbers, but you can see it on the iTunes chart, so it's always quite up there. So, but the interesting thing is, well, you would think that in the times that we live in, people would not have the time to spend 8 hours listening to a podcast. It's crazy, obviously. But I think people listen to podcasts today, to these kind of podcasts, like they're listening to audiobooks. So you go back to the conversation when you're on the subway or in the car, and get used to the conversations. But it's still crazy to record those podcasts. It takes a lot of time.
But it's a very cool concept. We have a question.
We're actually trying to. We will try to record the first one in English quite soon. So we're working on this.
With the same concept.
With the same concept. Yeah.
Looking forward.
So, as you're an editor, how would you like to design the perfect feedback with your audience, or the feedback process? So, like to involve them, because classical print media is like you send something out, reaction, maybe in a letter or something like this, but how would you like to design this, or how do you see it in the future?
I think on all levels and on every platform that you can use. It's for example, for the podcast, we always talk about, we have an email address, very simple, old school, and we always ask the listeners to criticize us and tell us what they didn't like or what they liked about this episode, and also about who they would like us to invite. And we actually answer every email, like Jochen or I, and Jochen or myself, and it takes a lot of time. But I think it's really worth it to be like in direct communication. And people, you know, people are always so surprised that we answer them personally, the emails. They
don't expect
no, they don't expect you to do it. And I think, you know, you have to react on Twitter when someone is tweeting something about the magazine. I think that has totally changed. I mean, you know, you're right. 20 years ago, if you would just publish an article or, you know, a story or whatever, and that was it, and then you would get some letters. Usually complaining about something, right? I mean, if you write a reader's letter, you usually complain. I think today it's this large, crazy mix of, you know, emails, tweets, comments on social media all the time, and also meeting people. I mean, we're you know, ZEIT is doing 200 events a year. So we're really out there meeting people all the time, and I think that's so important, especially in digital times. You know, the reason why you're here, I guess, is also because we live we live in digital. You know, we have a digital life, all of us. So we're really reaching out to meet people in person, and trying to, you know, like meet people in groups that you think they are interesting.
I remember the story from the first your visit in Riga about one angry reader. You called him.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Maybe you can share this story.
Yeah. So I totally forgot about that. So yeah. So what I do is I tell my assistant to collect the harshest emails or reactions from readers that we get, and every couple of weeks when I have some time, like maybe a meeting is being cancelled and I have an extra hour, I tell her to call these people. Like, you know, the readers who really hated something, you know, a story or an issue or whatever. And then it's always funny because they, you know, you just call them and you're like, oh yeah, I just wanted to catch up with you, and, you know, what didn't you like and why, and then just explaining why we did, you know, we published this story, for example. And it's funny, sometimes, I mean, I got this, I don't know if that's the example you were talking about, but I got a reader's letter one day from a man in Hanover, announcing that he will stop his subscription, right? So he'll, you know, that's the toughest weapon you have as a reader, is like, you know, I'm going to cancel my subscription. So I called the number, and there was a woman picking up the phone with the same surname, last name. And I said, oh, I think probably your husband wrote a letter to me. I guess I don't know if it's your husband or yeah. So I was just you know, trying to reach out to him. Is he available? And she said, yeah, sure, I'll call him. And then she put down the phone and said, you know, but I could still hear her. And she was talking to her husband, saying like, oh, there's the editor from ZEITmagazin. Please be polite. And so he picked up the phone, really grumpy voice. Yes, so hello. So we had this conversation, and during that conversation, I asked him, so you were going to stop your subscription? And he said, well, yeah. So, and then I said, oh, that's so sad. And is the subscription under your name? And then he said, well, no, it's actually my wife's. Yeah, and I hope that they're still subscribing to the site. But it's like people are really surprised if you reach out to them, even if they don't expect you to do it. That's the thing, you know, people write a reader's letter or an email or a comment on the website. They never expect you to read it, and they're always like very surprised if you react to it personally.
Thank you, Christoph, for sharing your story and your daily routine on social media. And my takeaway from this is that you can turn hate into love. Maybe you just need to pay some attention.
Yeah, and also to, you know, sometimes I do a Sunday free, social media Sunday free Sunday. Yeah, sometimes I do it. I think that's very, it's also very healthy.
As this is a Friday, and I hope you will have many more posts about Digital Freedom Festival, and yeah, hope to see you next time in Riga.
Well, thank you so much for having me here. I love
Big
Riga so
applause
much.
for Christoph.
Thank you. Thank you.